Hi everyone, this is Lulu from As You Wish Pottery, and in this video we'll be painting this adorable Mary platter. So grab all your supplies and let's get started. Alrighty, so for this project we're going to be using a sticker with the word Mary on it. As you see, the sticker has contact paper on top, so that way it makes it easier for us to transfer it over to the center of the platter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center it as best as I can. I might stand up to just make sure that it's all centered well. Then I'm going to press that sticker down with my finger. I'm also going to use a bottle to just make sure that there's no bubbles in between the sticker and the bisque. So I'm just pressing it down, making sure that it's all secure, and then once it's solid onto the piece, I'm going to peel off that contact paper carefully to make sure that I just have the sticker letters on the piece, and that's it. So as you see, I'm just securing it all down. Now I'm going to grab the corner, and remember, when you're pulling the contact paper, be gentle so that way you don't accidentally peel off your sticker. Alright, once the sticker is set on the center of the platter, use a pencil to sketch the inner center of the platter and use the platter's natural groove to guide you. So as you see, I just used the pencil to kind of lightly sketch, and I'm also going to pass my hand through that to make sure that there's no leftover graphite. Now we're going to use the fan brush to paint the center of the platter with 1 to 2 coats of red. This could be red blaze or rockin' red, whichever of the two you prefer. And I'm using the fan brush because it'll help me follow along the lines of the circle that I sketched. So all I'm doing is just messily painting on top, using the fan brush over the sticker, but just making sure that it's all well coated all over. So sometimes I will dip my brush in a little bit of water just to loosen up the paint and to ensure that everything's covered evenly. Alrighty, so now what we're going to do is we're going to trace the image on our lesson plan for the wreath. So this is going to be the leaves that are going to be going around the rim of the platter. I'm using a pencil, tissue paper, and the traceable image. Then once I have it all traced onto the tissue paper, I'm going to transfer it over to the platter with a marker. So I'm going to set the tissue paper on top of the rim where I want it to be, and then I'm going to follow along the lines to create the leaves that will go around. Keep in mind though that you might have to shift some things around. Not all the leaves might fit in your platter, so just depends on how much space you have to work with and how you fit them all around. So you might have to curve the design a little bit more, or you might have to shift things a little bit here and there, but just keep in mind that you can see the design through the tissue paper, so that way you know where to put things and where to place things. Also remember that the marker disappears once the piece is fired, so if you make any mistakes or if there's anything you don't want to paint on there, feel free not to paint it just because it will not show up at all. Alrighty, so we're going to continue doing this until we have our rim completely sketched out. Next, we're going to use a ruler, or we're going to create a ruler by folding a piece of paper to act as a ruler, as you see here. So I folded it halfway first, and then I folded that half again, and then I fold that one more time. I used this 2 halves to just draw the first 2 lines, but then I'm going to fold it again. So the idea here is to create a ruler so you can draw some horizontal and vertical lines. So I did about 7 to 8 horizontal and 7 to 8 vertical lines, however many fit in your platter. So try not to stress too much about however many fit. Just try to make sure that they have enough space. And so as you see, I'm using the folded ruler to act as my guide, and it allows me to have the perfect amount of space in between each row. So I suggest that you do that, and if not, if you have a ruler, you can do the same thing and follow the same steps. So as you see, I'm also using a pencil to draw my lines. I'm going about it very lightly and carefully because I'm not trying to scrape off any paint. I just want to have a nice little guide for the plaid later. Also remember that the pencil disappears after the piece has been fired, so it's okay if you go off. As you see on my bottom line here towards the left, you see that I kind of went off a little bit. That's totally okay. It's not going to show, so that's what's nice right now. That's why I like to do a lot of my planning with my pencil first, because I know that it won't show up after it's fired. Alrighty, so once you're done sketching your lines, you're going to use the small round brush and Simply Cinnamon to paint the plaid lines. You can also switch to your detail brush if you feel more comfortable doing that. I started off with the small round brush, and then I created just the basic lines first, just to know how thick I wanted them to be and how they overlap one another. So I'm using my small round brush for that first, and then once I have all my lines kind of basically put down, then I'm going to go in with my detail brush and kind of paint them a little bit better. Remember that when you're using the detail brush, it allows you to do 1 to 2 coats the first go around, so you don't have to go over it too many times. And I feel like with the round brush you have to do a little bit more coats to ensure that it's as solid as it would be with the detail brush. So it really depends on whatever feels the most comfortable to you. If you prefer using your round brush, then continue on that way, and if not, you can switch out to your detail brush and just fix your lines whenever they're needed and whatnot. So as you see right now, I'm just doing my round brush, making sure that all my lines are like the right thickness and that they overlap each other as they should. And then once I am good there, I'm going to go in with my detail brush and just clean up those lines and make sure that they're all solid from left to right. I also highly suggest that you rotate your platter around and work the lines, work at the lines however you feel the most comfortable. So as you see, I always start off from left to right, and then once I'm done from left to right, then I go right to left. This is just more comfortable for me as I'm working. I like to do like half of the line one way and then rotate the platter and do the same thing but the opposite direction. This will just ensure that your stripes are all the same amount of coats, you know, so they'll be solid all the way through. And I also think it adds a really nice clean touch and look when everything's even. So don't forget, we're painting both the horizontal and the vertical lines. So whichever direction, whichever way you want to go about it, just make sure that they're all covered and well coated. Once done painting all the lines, we're going to let the piece dry for just a couple minutes, and once all the lines are dry, we're going to be using the Black Lab Fun Writer to outline all of our lines and fill in the centers of all the overlapping rows. So every horizontal and vertical line, wherever they meet, we're going to fill that little space with a little bit of Black Lab, and we're going to continue on. I started on from the center of the platter and then I went outwards. That way that area dries the quickest, so when it comes time for me to pull out the sticker, I won't be touching anything wet. Remember to shake the bottle really well before using it. Remember to keep the Fun Writer pin nearby, just in case your bottle gets clogged. Remember to try not to scrape too much paint, just because the idea is to just have that black fit into that spot. And if your bottle gets clogged, remember to use the pin to unclog it. Also remember to clean off the tip after you've painted a little bit, just because it gets a little bit of paint on there and we don't want to drag anything that we don't need to drag. So while the center of the platter dries, let's paint the holly leaves on the rim with a detail brush and 1 to 2 coats of lime Ricky. Once you're done with the holly leaves, the center of the platter should be dry to the touch, and now you can go ahead and peel off your sticker. I use the back of my detail brush. Just anything pointy will help. And what I'm trying to do is make sure that no dry paint touches my wet green. So as you see, 2 of my sets of holly leaves are already dry. So what I'll do is when I'm removing all that dry paint, I'm going to be going through those sides that are the driest to ensure that there's nothing wet on my, or nothing black or anything like that on my wet green paint. Now let's continue painting the leaves on the rim with the detail brush and 1 to 2 coats of lime Ricky. For these leaves, paint them randomly as we will use a nether green for the rest. Next, use the small round brush or the detail brush to paint the rest of the leaves with 1 to 2 coats of Kermit. Next, use red glaze and Q-tips or the flat back of a pencil to paint the red berries around the rim. Add clusters of 2 or 3 berries wherever the space allows. Now we will add some accent to the holly leaves by using the small round brush to water down Teal Tomorrow to the consistency of watercolor. Then once we have the consistency nice and loose, we're going to add the watered down teal to the leaves by tapping the brush onto the surface and letting the paint pool and spread on its own. So what I do is that I start from the center of the leaf and then I kind of tap outwards towards the edges of the leaf to create a little bit more of clusters that kind of spread out towards the edge and allow me to have that really nice overlapping tone all around the leaf. So I'm going to start off with the larger ones and then I'll keep on going until all my large holly leaves are painted, and then once we're done there, we'll move on to the next step. Keep in mind that the more layers you add, the darker the color will be. Teal Tomorrow is generally a really dark color, so what I'm trying to do here is create a variance between all the leaves. Some of them to look a little darker, some of them to look a little lighter, and it just depends on how much paint you add. So if you wanted to have a little bit more of a dual tone kind of things, moving a little bit differently and looking a little bit different but with the same kind of effect, I just highly suggest that you do less coats, less going over everything else, and it'll look great. Paint smaller leaves inside the lighter lime Ricky leaves with the detail brush and 1 to 2 coats of double mint. Next, mix a small amount of teal tomorrow with double mint, and with the detail brush, paint the smaller leaves inside the darker Kermit leaves around the rim. With a clean detail brush, add stems to the berries around the leaves with Simply Cinnamon. Next, use Q-tips or the flat bottom of a pencil to paint black lab dots around the inner edge of the platter. Next, we will be using the Black Lab Funwriter to outline all of the leaves, berries, and hollies. Keep in mind though that I highly suggest that you let your piece dry for a couple minutes, just so that way the Funwriter has an easier time gliding through the paint and it causes less issues while outlining and detailing. Note that you should have your Funwriter pin nearby just in case your bottle gets clogged but for any reason, as well as I like to have a sponge or a piece of paper towel or something to clean off the tip of my Funwriter as I'm using it, just because it does drag over paint and it will kind of collect things, and I want my lines to be clean and thin, so I will always kind of clean it off after it's collected a little bit of stuff. I'm going around the rim, and feel free to do this however you feel the most comfortable. If you feel comfortable doing some things at a time, that's totally okay. I just highly suggest that you let your piece dry before you attempt to outline. Also remember, you can always practice on a piece of paper with the Funwriter just to know how consistency the paint is, or how consistent the paint is, how much you need to squeeze, that kind of thing. It's always best to know before you actually do it on your piece. So feel free to take a couple minutes to practice and just to get a feel for the bottle before you go ahead and start attempting to outline. Lastly, I'm just going to add a couple highlights to all the berries using the back of a round brush or a detail brush, whatever you'd like to use. You can also use a polar bear Funwriter. And I'm just adding little circles and dots to the berries to give it more of a little bit of a highlight. And I'm using polar bear for this part. So here's a little close-up of the finished piece. On the next slide over, you'll be able to see the fired version. So that way you can note that all the colors will look so much brighter, and that sticker is going to look really sharp and nice. So thanks so much for painting with me today. Have a great day, and bye-bye.